and la la. And so
I will say that in my experience, like the community is the thing, especially here in Petaluma. People want to be connected.
Yeah.
They want to feel like they're part of a community. And when you have, and I don't mean this as a strategy, because I do believe that I'm a better person when I'm connected to the community. So I do love to create that. But also that's what everybody feels. And like when they feel like they're being connected within their own community. So those are the people that you want to do the event for, even though it's an industry event, for example. It's like you want the community to be involved in that. And the industry people are going to benefit from that, because suddenly somebody just shows up and is like, oh my God, I had no idea that Griffo Distillery even existed, which I don't know if that's a possibility here in Petaluma, but you know, it could be. It's so funny your relationship with Phaedra. So I've heard you talk about her, Monarch Bitters. And then when we were on the Griffo podcast, Jenny mentioned Phaedra as well. And me, I consider myself obviously outside of the industry, and I'm just a community member. And I'm like, oh, I'm putting like this name and together with Danny. And then Griffo's saying the same thing. And I'm like, I walked in after that podcast. I have walked by her shop 1,000 times. Yeah, I'm not joking, because I go to Mi Pueblo at least 5 times a week.
Yeah.
I saw after that, and I looked, I'm like, oh shit, I just put 2 and 2 together. Here she is, literally in my face, 1 street away every single day. And I walked in there and I looked at her, and she must have thought I was a nut job, because I was like, I have heard so much about you. I've heard some amazing things. I know Danny. I just didn't and I just introduced myself, and then she was so sweet and lovely. Yeah. And then I just walked out. I was like some random girl just walked in and was like, it's so nice to meet you. Oh yeah. That's hilarious. But back to the community thing, it's like people just, I've heard her name because I've been to events that you have done, or I've been to places that feature her products. And I've heard it, but only as a community member. And that's when I discovered the people in the industry. Right. And that's when I discovered her. And then I have an appreciation for that. And so now I follow her. And when she's doing something on Instagram, I'm like, oh, this is interesting to me. So I almost wonder if that's, I want to say angle, I don't mean that in an icky, schmarmy way, but that's it. It's like, at least here in Petaluma, it's like speaking to the community and showing them how they can be a part of what's going on in any industry is probably the way.
For sure. And I think, she's done a lot, and, how she gets connected and things that she's done to like put herself out there. And, granted, she's a fucking amazing person, and you meet her and you just like fall in love with her, and, her products are dynamite, but she's just a badass as well. And how she gets herself out there, is something, that I should have been paying attention to more, and even talking to her, we always talk about like collaborating together all the time. And, so, I think it's, I don't know. Sometimes I've thought about doing it, like figuring out the approach, and like, oh, when the fair is in town, or when the circus is in town, and like, not that we're circus performers, but we're like the circus, and like, how do you get the community to come to check out the circus, so to speak. And I think taking it from that mindset, because it's even really hard just to even like the friends that we have in the community, like in the industry and like close, and having them want to even promote it as well, which like a lot of people don't want to do that. And there's probably been like 5% of the people that we've podcasted with that have actually like reposted that they podcasted. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I'm looking like I'm all surprised at that, but actually I feel the same way. I wonder if it's, I always try to put myself in the shoes. We all have so much shit going on. Like, I think that like it's a whole other topic that we can visit another time, but like in general, I feel like everybody has just way too much shit happening. But for example, like, and actually I'm the same way. The reason I bring people on is to connect with them, but most of them are people that I want to evangelize them because I just think they're cool. And it's not even just, it's a cool business, but it's like, they're amazing people. and whatever they're doing should be noticed.
Yeah.
You do the same thing with your podcast. Like you're really good at, not just with your podcast, just in general, but you're really good at evangelizing people. I don't know if we're the exception. Like maybe it's not that they don't want to do it. It's just not on their radar to do it. You know what I mean? It's not a part of who they are. You are the person who is like, wow, shine the spotlight over here because this is super cool.
Sure.
And maybe it's just that there's not, but to your point is like, I do feel like, wow, is it because I'm not asking these people to talk about the podcast that they don't share it, or it was a moment in their life. And
I don't really know if it's, I don't even want to say it's their duty, maybe it's just ours, to like, we're the ones that want to like showcase them. So we should keep doing that. And, and I think those are all things. I mean, even now, like thinking about next year and podcasting and, even looking at what you've done and be like, fuck, like reading some about it and like, the other podcasts I listen to, Bartender at Large, all the time, it's kind of like, oh, like they keep like posting things about the podcast. You take it like your little snippets and like have the voice going on, or you'll take a certain word, or a certain phrase or a couple sentences, and then you have it on there. And, I'm thinking about it that way. And, even for myself, like, why the fuck did I not ever like put it on my own Instagram? Like I just always left it on the Good Time Bros. And, now recently I'll go back and I'll put it on my story at least and be like, boom, and now, or I never even put the link to the goddamn fucking episode on our Instagram.
We're all just figuring it out, I think, is what it is. It's
but
like,
yeah, and I think, I mean, I know at first for us, it was just kind of like a thing. And, like we drank way too fucking much on the first like 15 probably. And, then it was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't drink so much, and like literally blacking out like during the episode.
I will say here's the one thing I do know.
Yeah.
And this podcast might be one, at least less than a handful of occasions in my life in which this has happened. And that is that you do it because you love it.
Right. You
don't try to figure out A to Z before you do it. Yeah. You just start doing it. And you're like, oh, this worked. This didn't work. Great. I'll find something else until you get to a point where it feels good. And it evolves every week. And it's like, as long as you are coming at it from a place of, it's something I love to do.
Yeah.
It's not hurting anybody else. It's evangelizing other people. That's when it works.
Yeah.
And it's a very slow process. Like we're little fish in a big fucking pond, right? So we're just going to keep doing it as long as we love it.
Yeah.
And we don't burn out on it. And at some point it's going to resonate with people. I mean, I'm fortunate, and maybe you are the same. Fuck, my tailbone is killing me. These chairs are hard.
They are hard.
Where I've had some people discover other people because they heard the podcast.
Yeah.
And they've started doing work together, or they've exchanged business, or they become friends. And it's, a very small pond, but that feels really good to me.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing the same thing. And
I mean, that's definitely the hope, and that's why I'm kind of like smacking myself in the face, because it's like, really want the community to listen to it, because it's not just, super nerding out on industry stuff. It's just like this. It's just conversation, a lot of laughs, a lot of distractions,
but that's life.
But it's fun. Yeah. I mean, you still learn some stuff, you're going to learn something regardless, whether it's just like about that person.
I learned that I like.
You like the Reposado? You had the Reposado right there in your glass.
actually like the first one better.
Okay, perfect.
Oh.
Oro Bronco.
Well, okay, great. So should we like hashtag Grande Vejo?
Grande Vejo.
And tell Sal, good job. How's Sal doing? Anyway.
Oh no,
is this the one that he didn't actually?
Yeah, this brand was already kind of established, and then he brought him on. But the guy who makes it, Sergio.
Sergio, you can come onto the podcast.
Yeah,
does he speak English?
I don't think very well. Not that much, yeah. Because I was trying to like talk to him and ask him some questions, and then Sal would translate. But I think he could, he might know a few words, but yeah.
We can try and scrape our way through in Spanish. My Spanish is very ugly. I want to ask you something about so we've been talking about your podcast, but the latest episode that you posted, did you post it yesterday or today? Current Mood is what it was called?
Yeah, right before we started.
Okay. You, at the very beginning, said, I'm really working on trying not to talk so much, is what you said in your podcast. And I'm sure maybe or maybe not that you remember saying that, but this kind of goes back to, and I'm actually going to enlighten people. We're going to be working on like hour 4 here pretty soon. This is going to be, I don't care. You and I have kind of on occasion, I feel like we've kind of gotten a little clunky in this conversation about like, what are the processes behind how you do the podcast, right?
Yeah.
I think you and I take a different approach, and we've probably come to this point where we've just agreed to disagree on how it should be. I think truthfully, we're coming at it from the same direction. We just don't know how to articulate it to each other. But one thing I do a lot that I think you might react to is that I do tend to insert myself and my stories into my podcast, right? Like for me, it's more of like, you and I are getting to know each other. So here's a little bit about you and here's a little bit about me. It's a little bit different on yours because you're very thoughtful about like, here's a thing, here's a person in the industry, and we definitely want to make sure that we're focused on it. But so I've sometimes had you in the back of my head now since I've met you, like we're in my ear of like, stop talking, Danielle, stop talking. Don't tell your story. Listen to the other person. And so then I heard this podcast, or just a little bit of this podcast that you just posted, and you were like, I'm going to try to stop talking so much. And I'm just curious, like, what does that mean for you? And why do you feel, because before you go there, I'm going to say, you have great stories and you have great input, and your connection with the people that you have is important. I'm curious as to why you feel like you have to insert yourself less.
I don't, I think it's just a matter. I think there have been some podcasts where I feel like the guest didn't really like talk that much, and have it on. And then it's really just kind of like maybe that should be the point. I don't know, but it comes like the Danny and Franco show, and, I generally do want to hear their story, and I do generally want them to share their story. So I think, it really becomes, it's definitely different with each person, because if there's something that just kind of like clicks in my head and I want to tell a story, I can go. But then also I can, I guess I'm just very like aware of it. And so when I hear Franco kind of ramble on, it'll be like, yeah, so anyways, you were talking about, blah, 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 and like, I'll have to cut him off. Cause it's just like, now you're just rambling on. So it's between like telling a story and just rambling on. So I guess it's not that I don't necessarily want to, but I also know I'm very aware that I can go on a soapbox a lot of times, and then I'll just be like, once the passion comes out, I'm just like, blah, 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 like soapbox. I've been soapboxing this whole episode here, right now. And so.
But I don't feel that way.
No, I'm just, and I'm not, maybe that's just like me, like poking fun of myself, but yeah, I want to make sure that they get to share, and yeah, I'm sure, like not everybody's very comfortable at first, or like they have their own kind of like thought about what it's like to come on here. And then once it happens, they're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. That was so much
happens
fun.
Every single time.
Yeah.
I was so nervous. And then 5 minutes in, I forgot I was on the radio. I'm like, yep, that's pretty much what it is.
But, they might not also, who knows? Like maybe once we do become big time and this and that, but, it's definitely very weird when people come back to you and they're like, oh, I never knew you were like a personal trainer. Oh, you watch Twitter for porn. And like all of a sudden they start, knowing you without really knowing you.
Right.
Or maybe they do know you a little bit, but they're like, oh, wow, and they start asking you questions about it. So, to really kind of expose yourself out there, whether we have one listener or 1 million, it's like, so to forget about that, I think it's easier for us probably